What's the best piece of advice you've ever received, and whether it's personal or professional? I mean, we can go either way, but what stands out to you maybe the most?
Yeah, one of the things before I went in the military, I had already signed up.
Okay.
And both my brother, who had been a Marine Corps officer, and my dad, who had retired as a sergeant first class from the Army, both of them told me separately, when you go in, because I was going as an officer, I want you to, you need to, as a leader, you need to be yourself. Don't try to be something you're not.
Okay.
And because people just see right through that. So I think that was my first experience of being an authentic leader.
Welcome to the Inner Genius Podcast with Joe Pastor.
Hey, I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of the Inner Genius Podcast. I'm excited to be back with you again this week. And today we've got a very special guest I'm super excited about, a gentleman I have come to know here over the last couple of months. Been very impressed with him and his background and what he stands for. I think he's going to add a lot of fantastic content, value, insights to today's show. So I'm excited to finally have booked him and get him on. He's kind of rising up in the podcast guest world. He's been booking shows, and I was fortunate to get him first. So Marshall, thank you for making the time to be with us today.
Hey, thanks, Joe. Really good to be with you today. I'm very happy about this podcast. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Well, let's get kicked off for everybody listening. Share a little bit with us your background. I mean, you got a very, I would say, interesting and unique background that I think's lent itself in some unique ways to the engineering construction space. So, kind of take us from growing up to today.
Yeah. So, my dad was in the Army, his career Army, and he retired basically when I was like 8. So we grew up in North Carolina, where him and my mom are both from, and near Fort Bragg, I guess, about an hour or so away. And I was one of 8 kids. So I was number 7 of 8, 4 boys, 4 girls, youngest boy.
Okay.
And after the Army, my dad started doing construction, and my mom did as well. So they would build rental houses. They would build 2 at a time normally, and they keep one and sell one. So that's kind of what they lived off of with the Army pension as well. But kind of interesting because they had, while I was out there working in the hot summers in North Carolina, and during the off times from school, and I thought, I'll never go into construction. And the other thing I thought I'll never go in the military. Right. So fast forward another, 15 years or so, I had graduated from North Carolina State with a bachelor's degree in material science and engineering. And then I stayed and got a master's in that as well.
Okay.
But the jobs were very difficult then in the mid 80s, late 80s.
Okay.
So I ended up looking into the Air Force and looking into the Navy. Top Gun had come out that time, and I thought, wow, I can go be a pilot. But my eyesight just wasn't like Tom Cruise's, I guess.
Right.
So I ended up going into the Civil Engineer Corps, which was right up my alley, really. Projects, construction. I mean, I thought, well, I'll do this for 4 years, get some experience and get another job. But, I loved it so much. It was just a great career in the Navy. It was something problem solving, meeting people, doing engineering, but really project management is really what I like. And I was able to focus on that. Okay. In fact, this week is the Civil Engineer Corps birthday for the Navy. I think it's the 154th. And
really?
Tomorrow, that was March 2nd. And then March 5th is the Seabees birthday, which is tomorrow. We're recording this on March 4th. But so the Seabees are construction battalions. That's part of the Civil Engineer Corps in the Navy. They do construction all over the world for contingencies, disasters, that type of thing.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I mean, you retired as a captain out of the Navy?
I did retire as a captain. So I stayed for 24, 25 years. So yeah. I was just going to go for 4 years, and then I ended up staying for 25. Yeah. So it's pretty interesting.
Wow. It's like the Roach Motel. You check in, you just don't check out. Right. So that's incredible. I can't see myself doing construction, and I'm definitely not doing military. And you look back and Looks like you had a beautiful career though in that part of your life. I mean, just a lot of things, really came together. It just sounds like it's such a natural fit. That's interesting. I mean, that's kind of one of the questions I leave for later in the show, but maybe we should talk about it now is, looking back over the career you've had to date, was there something about the natural ease of those first couple of years in the military that brought a sense of, I don't know, peace and calm, but also matched with what you were good at, that said, yeah, I'm in the right spot. This is where I really need to be. And I'm thinking kind of for, the young, maybe a bit of a younger generation listening to this, coming out of school, really trying to figure out that whole, what am I supposed to do? And am I supposed to love it? Am I supposed to be passionate? Do I, because I think that can cloud sometimes whether you're doing what you should be doing or go do something else. But I'm curious, how did that fit for you?
Yeah, that when I couldn't find a job coming out of the university, it was kind of difficult because everybody's told you all along, you get an engineering degree, you're golden, right?
Right.
But it's really not the case. You really do have to still network. You really have to have some experience.
Okay.
I mean, their companies are still looking for that.
Sure.
How much experience you're going to have as a college student? Not much, but there's ways to get it. Anyway, so I think the way I look back at it over time is this was God's plan for me. It was take me in the military. Yeah, maybe it wasn't my first choice, but it was the right choice for me in the long run.
Okay.
I had been around the military enough, growing up with my dad in the military, as well as two of my brothers went in the military. Okay. And I had visited one of them for the summer in Hawaii. He was stationed in Hawaii.
Oh, that's a tough assignment.
Got stationed to.
Yeah. That's great.
Anyway, so I had visited him one summer stayed for the summer. And so I'd been around the military a lot. So it was a good fit still. And I think, people don't understand. There's a lot of different facets in the military. There's a lot of different types of jobs and roles. And for me, going in the Navy, I never served on a ship in 25 years, but because we were in the CV battalions, the construction battalions, that was our deployments. Okay. Our sea duty, I guess, if you will.
I gotcha.
But it was just a good fit for me for problem solving. I love problem solving growing up, playing board games. Sure. Doing math problems, those types of things. It was a good natural fit for me.
Okay. Well, it's just interesting. I mean, I think of some of the guests we've had on the show and will have on the show, not everybody has, military experience. And, just in our world, recruiting and staffing that we do for this particular space, a lot of the military folks we've run into, really solid, really, kind of stand out in really some remarkable ways. And yeah, I don't know if you see that when you're younger, the training and the discipline and the rigor and sort of what it brings to developing you as an individual. Cause they talk about that all the time, right? We need someone who can technically do the work, but they got to be a right culture fit. And cultures vary, but a lot of times it comes with, are you consistent? Are you punctual? Are you you're someone I can lean on, when things get tough. And seems like in the military, a lot of those things, a lot of those elements of what is the human person really get exercised regularly. And those oftentimes become, I would say, the hallmarks of strengths, certainly with a lot of the candidates that I've worked with over the years. So it's just interesting how you bring that up, kind of the different facets. The military is just not one dimensional. Right. It would be kind of remiss to look at it that way. We'll get into some of the things that you've done here recently and, the last, 10, 15 years. But when you were in the military, you were doing projects, in this country and in overseas, right? You did a couple of deployments. And
yes, I did some with the CV battalion. I did deployments to Guam.
Okay.
And then to Scotland, actually. Okay. And then we had a presence in Europe, and my particular detachment was in Scotland, which is I was leading a group of 25 of us. Okay. Guys I still see still keep up with to this day, 30 years later. So, wow. And then went to Diego Garcia, which is an island that's owned by the Brits. And it's in the middle of the Indian Ocean, basically, near the Maldives.
Oh, that's a beautiful, Maldives are gorgeous.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's another one of those penitential, I got to go Hawaii for a summer thing, right?
Yeah, it's just all military base. There's nothing else there, but it is beautiful. No doubt
It is.
about it. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, so what's the difference? I mean, a lot of times on the show, we talk about construction, project management, the energy space. Is it really, really different? I mean, yours is in the military, so maybe you probably have a unique answer, but I've, wondered when you take on projects outside the country and you take on projects inside the country, how are they similar? How are they different? Are the challenges unique, different? I mean, what's it like? Is it kind of a different mindset?
Yeah. So in the military, we were still getting our logistics. All of our supplies were pretty much from the United States.
Okay.
Some of the local materials maybe we would get. In Guam, you could do that. In Scotland, you could do that, but not in Diego Garcia. You just had to ship everything in.
Okay.
But when I was with Exxon Mobil,
Right.
after my Navy career,
Right.
when I worked in Iraq
Mm-hmm.
and lived in Dubai, but you really couldn't get local materials there either. So starting that pipeline of materials, you have to start early, particularly for big oil and gas projects.
Okay.
I think that's one of the big factors there, but also just working with the local owners of the land, because we're building pipelines. There's a big oil field, but there's local owners. Working with them is challenging. You also have other challenges that maybe you wouldn't think of, particularly in Iraq, but because you have unexploded ordnance, you're working around. So you have to monitor for that. In Iraq, we had 55 degrees Celsius. It's about 125 degrees Fahrenheit.
Man,
you're working. So you have to work around those type of conditions during the summer. So things like that, I think were challenging, and particularly in Iraq. Overseas projects sometimes they have different contracting requirements from the government. Okay. So you have to follow their contracting requirements as well.
Okay. It's interesting. I mean, kind of you say a different language, but yeah, you get into the contract. I mean, different way of doing things, got to get your arms around it, and building the pipeline early. That's really interesting. Especially if you find yourself somewhere remote or just you're not here in the States, so to speak. You got to really kind of get out in front and ahead of yourself. That's something I hadn't really thought about on the material delivery side of life, but I mean, it certainly makes a lot of sense. And I mean, you live in Texas, so you're no stranger to the heat, but 55C that's another level of heat, I think. I grew up in Texas, so I like the heat, but yeah, that's kind of next level, I think, and it's interesting too, because, I've worked in remote areas where it's cold, and it's interesting, when you're working around zero, that also has its unique challenges too. When getting cold and it does impact, looking at the schedules to the projects, the manpower curves, right? Whether you one shift, two shift, how you rotate people in and out. It's a very, very real cost, right? And impact to the project as a whole. You can't be overlooked.
Right. I did some work in Canada as well with Exxon Mobil on projects, but so they, when it gets down to a certain temperature, you've got to either stop the work or you work around that temperature some other way. Okay. And the same thing in Iraq. So we went from -40 to +40, as some people would say to me. Wow. It was actually a little bit more than that in Iraq.
Wow. That's a challenge. Well, talk to us a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about, the Exxon experience that you have in the oil and gas, and you've even been around some renewable projects as well. So kind of go in any direction you want, but definitely like to hear more about it and have you kind of share with us some of the projects that you've done. I think you've done some interesting stuff.
Yeah. So I think with the Exxon Mobil, it's more of a strategy type of thing, particularly when you're planning a project, because you're planning these projects 5 to 10 years out, right? Mm-hmm. So you're doing $1 billion projects that require a lot of multinational support, and also you're probably doing it with another partner or two. So okay. You're partnering. You're also partnering with the local government if it's in a certain area, like. For example, we were doing a project in Papua New Guinea, and where we're going to build a 400-kilometer pipeline across the jungle, that a very remote location that
Mm.
had a lot of challenges. You know, you're going past a volcano and has volcanic soil in it, which causes material issues.
Okay.
You have a lot of earthquakes in that area, that type of thing. So you
Okay.
had to plan all this stuff out, and you plan a long ways out early on.
Mhm.
You know, we're planning years out before we even start the engineering, right?
Okay.
You're trying to figure out how you're going to execute the work 5 years from now.
Okay.
So those are some kind of things that so that's mainly what I've done as major capital projects, big projects like that.
Okay.
In the Navy, I was in charge of all the projects at Camp Pendleton, Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton in Southern California.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when I got there, when I arrived back in 2005, we were doing around 200 million a year in projects.
Okay.
And that was also during the height of the Iraqi war. So things were starting to ramp up on the training side, and wanted more troops to be stationed at Camp Pendleton. We added about 4,500 troops.
Wow.
And Camp Pendleton is already a huge base of 70,000 people, but so adding not 70,000 military, but 70,000 of everyone, military, civilians, and families. But so we had to add $5 billion worth of work over a short period, like 5 years. And so we went from 200 million a year to over $1 billion a year. And it's a game changer, really.
Wow.
And so you have to really think strategically on how you're going to execute work, what's the best way to spend that kind of money, right?
Right.
You don't want to waste that kind of money.
Right. Right. What do you think the biggest challenge is? I mean, that's a good question. I mean, if you're going to scale that fast, what's the biggest issue you got to take off the table first? I mean, I don't know.
You know, Camp Pendleton, that was a tough assignment because you're still thinking execution at 200 million. I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, but we had the resources and the staff to do 200 million. But
sure,
when you go up to $1 billion a year for successive years and five straight successive years,
wow.
It's a big challenge. So I think you gotta get the right mindset with the people that can influence it the most. And that's the general.
Okay.
We had a good 2-star general, General Leonard, that was very big advocate for us. So he helped some things, as well as Colonel Seaton was my boss from the Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. Both of them were very on board with the construction program and trying to remove obstacles of what we needed to do to get the work done. I think it's just, I would say it's networking, but it's influencing without authority as well. You've got to talk to the right people that have authority and the right ones that can make the influence happen to smooth things out, I guess.
Okay. Do you try to sort of carry that down the chain? I mean, because you're fairly senior in this discussion. So when you start looking at you know, your lieutenants, you know, right-hand men, so to speak, and then as you want to carry it out, do you have to kind of keep that same mindset flowing to get the masses on board too, that this is the initiative and this is where, and it's a marathon, right? Like this is not for the next 12 months. This is for the foreseeable future, 60 months, whatever the case may be. I don't know, so they can pace themselves, I guess. Is that part of it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you do have to communicate both up and down and across, really. And I think that's what you're getting at. Yeah. You want to get alignment within your own staff as well, because they're the ones that are going to make a lot of things happen, right? So, and you want to make sure that we're all working as a team. And I think we did it. We were pretty successful at that. We were successful at that beforehand, of course, and then we were able to up our game together as a team.
Okay.
But you're right. The communication piece has to be there, and just as a leader, you got to figure out what obstacles there are that you can help remove to allow everyone to work better and more efficiently.
I see. So in a way, I mean, take bottlenecks and stumbling blocks away from those that you're empowering to sort of make those changes. I mean, essentially kind of do it for them in a way so that, you know, there's no setbacks or pushback even, in them being able to execute what it is you're trying to get across to the entire team. It's interesting. This kind of brings up another question I've got too is, Professionally speaking, I mean, we're talking about, I'd say the strategy, big picture. We talk about the tactical execution side of life. What are some of the tools that you've used, go back as far as you want, and even to today, that sort of help you execute professionally? I mean, whether it's, software or reading or, anything under the sun, what are things that you keep kind of coming back to that help you continue to be successful, day in and day out?
I think one of the things I think the biggest thing for me really is communicating with other people to help challenge me to think clearly and think ahead.
Okay.
Those are some of the bigger things for me. Yeah. You'll have to, when I go into a new job and you have to understand the process. Mm-hmm. You have to understand what the plan is from cradle to grave.
Okay.
And I think once I get that, once I can piece that together in my mind, mm-hmm. I understand it a lot better, and I understand where my gaps are, mm-hmm. that I probably can't bring to the table. I would need somebody else to, I can reach out to others to help me.
Sure.
Those are some of the tools I use to keep me moving forward with those. For big projects, particularly.
Okay. And then what about daily? I mean, you're kind of guy that keeps an old school paper calendar. Do you like a lot of the digital stuff? I mean, are there any platforms that you use as a way to either gain information, disseminate information? Maybe just kind of all in a day's work. What are things that you lean on technology wise?
Yeah, for me, I use the Google Calendar quite a bit, as well as the tasks from that as well. Okay. I can easily create a task out of an email and then have it on my calendar pretty quick. Okay. And what I try to do on a daily basis is, first of all, on my calendar, I block time. So mm-hmm. like I have time for coffee with my wife early in the morning, and then maybe read the Bible, that type of thing, and then work out. I try to have that in the block as well, because usually if I don't work out early in the morning, I don't always make time for it in the afternoon. Understand. My energy level is a little higher then. Yeah. And then I try to do some of the major tasks that I want. I have certain hours set aside for those blocks, I guess, and then I add in specific tasks for those areas. But I think so those just blocking time helps me a little bit, but also just relying on what's available. I've tried to write things down as well sometimes, but it just is not organized, and so I tried to keep the same method where I can keep it organized, I guess. Sure. And for me, what I do, got my train of thought again. Sure. At the end of the day. I like to look at what I want to get done tomorrow. Okay. And so I plan a little bit, maybe 20 or 30 minutes, plan about and trying to vision it in my mind so that I can think through how am I going to execute the next day. Okay. And then the next morning I'll look at it again, just to refresh it in my mind and say, well, does something change overnight where I need to adjust something? And usually in the military, something changed overnight.
Oh, really? Okay. So that was just normal.
That from really.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, that's a habit I've tried to get into myself, is kind of lay out, maybe it's a little twofold, right? Kind of what did I do today? And, good, bad, or indifferent, right? What did I kind of get done? And what do I really need to get done tomorrow? And then when I come in the morning, do you have to pivot on something because something has come up? Or, for me, it just helps. I've got a path. So I don't, kind of take the hard thinking away and just sort of follow, what it is I put down that I know I need to execute. So I kind of like where you're going with that. And that's, I think something that relatively new for me in the last year or so, but it's really, I think, helped keeping me focused. Part of the answers to your questions I thought were interesting. I want to go a little deeper too. One of the questions I do like to ask is, what's it like a day in your life? How do you typically move through a day? And you mentioned a couple of things, maybe you can repeat them too, but you talked about blocking the time and stuff. I think that's also a great way to tackle, what are challenging tasks, right? That's something that Cal Newport talks about in his book, Deep Work, really putting those times aside to really crush it and not try to work with this sort of fractured mindset because you hear these chimes going off on the laptop and the bings going off on the phone. And, it's hard to do really constructive, I think, deep thinking when you're constantly being pulled in different directions. But talk to us about, how do you go through the day? I mean, I love the fact you mentioned, time with your wife, time for prayer. What are some of those non-negotiables that you look to lean on every day that keep you on the straight and narrow, keep you successful?
Yeah, I mean, I think I am a routine guy. I do like routine because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I want to improve in a lot of different areas of my life and maintain a great focus in those areas. So
Okay.
I do try to block the time, time with my wife. That's very important. Time with God is very important. And then exercising.
Okay.
But for me right now, and we haven't mentioned this yet, but I was recently laid off at Exxon Mobil. So now I'm looking for a job, but I'm also want to do some things personally.
Sure.
And I look at it as a blessing. I have time now that I wouldn't have if I was still working right now, but
Right. Yeah.
I have time to do some things on the personal level that I need to do, but I'm also spending 3 or 4 hours a day doing job searching.
Mm-hmm.
So I block some time for that. I like to do real estate investing. So I block some time for that type of work, and then getting some other things in order in my personal life with finances and doing my taxes, that type of thing.
Sure.
So I block time for that as well.
Okay. No, I think that's important. I mean, I like the fact you talk about leaning on a routine. I think sometimes it's just not sexy, and so it's easy to deviate. And I know I've been guilty of that. But yeah, when you lean into it and you stay consistent, right, the momentum becomes very powerful over time of what you're able to do incrementally. And I think those are where the wins come from, right? It's not luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It helps you take a big task. If you do a little bit every day, it gives you momentum, as you said.
Yeah.
And then you can accomplish a big task that way.
That's true. No, that's true. Boy, I tell you, I need to go back and re-listen to this part of the show. That's I gotta own that piece of advice. I love it. Well, it's funny. I mean, that's kind of another place I like to go to in the podcast is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received, and whether it's personal or professional. I mean, we can go either way, but what stands out to you maybe the most?
Yeah, one of the things before I went in the military, I had already signed up.
Okay.
And both my brother, who had been a Marine Corps officer, and my dad, who had retired as a sergeant first class from the Army, both of them told me separately, when you go in, because I was going as an officer, I want you need to, as a leader, you need to be yourself. Don't try to be something you're not.
Okay.
And because people will just see right through that. So I think that was my first experience of being an authentic leader.
Okay.
Just from both of them telling me that, and that really has stuck in my mind for a long time. Mm-hmm. I think, some other advice I got was, to not just think about the task at hand, because all of us can just think about the task at hand every day, right?
Sure.
We also got to think ahead for the future and what's the big picture that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Appreciate you sharing that. It's interesting. It's kind of funny how life moves. I had a call with a candidate last night, and we talked about a role that we put them forward for. Went through the interview process, and they decided to go with someone else that we had put forward. And it was interesting because we kind of got to that point of authenticity, and I think this individual was kind of wondering, could I have done more in the presentation side? Because the resume everything was aligned, but the sort of the personality or the way they represented themselves just didn't resonate. And so I think they were kind of beating themselves up a little bit. So as I'm coaching them through it, I said, look, I mean, that happens. It happens, right? You should never fake it. Because that'd be the worst thing. You fake it, you get the job, you get in, and it's like, that's going to be a nightmare for you. Mm-hmm. You just got to be who you are. You're going to resonate with some people over other people, but to me, that's the golden link right there. Because if they really like who you are and you represent yourself openly and honestly, you're going to build a good working relationship. And quite frankly, you're going to see some pretty good success in whatever company and whatever endeavor that is. So, don't cheat it. Don't overthink it. Don't, maybe I can get more hyped on the next one. It's all false. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. That's great advice. I mean, it's funny. I heard a marketing guy talk about this one time in a completely different context. He was on stage and he's like, look, man, love me or hate me. There's no money in the middle. And it kind of hit me. I thought about, I was like, man, there's something true to that, right? I mean, there's people that are just, not going to like you and that's fine. And there's people that are going to love you and lean into you. But if you try to walk that line of pleasing everybody all the time and constantly change who you are, you'll never be happy. And quite frankly, you'll never stand out to anybody, because I think you're right. People see through it all day long. So just be you, quite frankly, no one else can do it better than you. So that's the upside, right? There's no better you than you. So
yeah, and it's hard to be that way all the time. You're trying to please people at the same time especially when you go into a new situation or at work, or you're trying to succeed at that situation. It's kind of hard to sometimes it's hard to be yourself, but so you have to look at it that what you said is the ones that make the money are on the opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Not the ones in the middle.
That's really, really true. I've come to see that through my career. I didn't know that early in, but yeah, you're absolutely right. No, there's no doubt about it. Let me ask you this real quick. So as again, maybe kind of giving back a little, to people that are getting in the engineering space, people getting into the construction space, maybe you're coming out of school, maybe you've been in 5 to 7 years. What do you have any advice for them or thoughts for them to consider, whether they want to do a military track or maybe, they move into the oil and gas space, and want to get to a very senior level like you've achieved. What kind of things should they consider or be thinking about as they're trying to be themselves?
Yeah. When I was at Exxon Mobil, we had a lot of new employees come in. A lot of them were ex-military. So a lot of times Exxon actually hires a lot of ex-military, usually to come in 4 to 10 years in the military. Unlike me, I came in after 25.
Sure.
So what I tried to do was mentor them a little bit, informally mainly, but I tell them, hey, you really need to network. That's one of the things. I don't feel like I probably understood that until later in my career. And I think the more you network, especially as a junior person, that the better people are going to know who you are. First of all, they're going to know that you care. And it just breaks down the wall a little bit, because most of us work in big organizations. I've only worked in 2 big organizations. So networking is important because people don't get to know you otherwise. If you're in a small company, they're going to probably get to know you anyway. But
I got you.
If you're in a big company, it's harder. And for example, at my last job, we had a manager, we had 4 middle managers basically under him. And there was a big ranking process. Well, if you bring a new person in and they only get to know their one manager, not the other 4, not the other 3, when it comes time to personnel discussions or where you're going to move and what job you're going to get, they don't know you. So you gotta break that bond, that wall, I guess, and help them to get to know you.
Okay.
And that's one of the big things I think for younger folks coming in.
Interesting. And especially in the bigger companies. I mean, that's interesting. You're right. I think smaller firms, there's probably just more interactions because it is smaller, right? You sometimes have to take on lots of different tasks, which I think cross-pollinates maybe more than a bigger firm where you can kind of stay in a lane because you do have the existing support structures to sort of help, but they're also in a lane as well. So that's really, I mean, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about it that way. Interesting. What do you, you mentioned it here a few minutes ago, you and I have talked about some opportunities. Obviously you're available, looking to kind of get back at it. So, let's just take a minute. What are you looking to do? What would you like to do kind of moving forward? Someone watching this and seeing you and listening to you and saying, man, this guy, he's going to add some serious value from day one. We want him. But what would you like? What do you want to do?
Well, I've done project management my whole 30-year career. And so major capital projects, big projects, or strategic thinking of projects,
okay,
or a big program of projects, that's kind of where my best strengths reside.
Okay.
Where I can add value to a company.
Okay.
I've done the COO type roles as well in the military. They're not quite transferable to the civilian world, but I've done that kind of role as well, and I really enjoyed it because you get to make a lot of high level decisions, and you're thinking about things in a high level.
Right.
So those type of roles kind of work for me.
Okay. What's your timetable? What's your runway? You looking to try to integrate back in here April sometime, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, over the next 3 months would be ideal. Yeah,
okay,
definitely.
Okay. All right. And then, I'm just looking at the time. This goes so fast. Every time I do one of these, I'm thinking I got more time and we're about out of time. So just kind of wrapping it up a little bit, what's the best way for someone to get in touch with you? And I kind of see that from two levels. If someone wants to obviously talk to you about, onboarding and being a part of the conversation for work, or there's something that you said that really resonated with an individual and they want to come back and have that discussion with you offline, maybe in a mentor capacity, or, can you tell me a little more? How would someone be able to get a hold of you? What's the best? Yeah,
I think the easiest way, and I'm open to talking to anyone and giving advice or just talking to companies. The best way for me is I'm very active on LinkedIn, mm-hmm. and they can find me pretty easily. Marshall Sykes, and you can put in Navy, you can put Exxon Mobil, you're going to find me pretty quick.
Okay, very good. Yeah. All right, and Sykes, Marshall Sykes.
Sykes.
Yeah, when I brought you on, I just said Marshall, but yeah, Marshall Sykes. And when we post the show, you'll see it all in the show notes, everything about Marshall. So he'll be easy to locate, and I can assure you, he is active on LinkedIn, and you will get a quick response in reaching out. But thank you. Hey, thanks I appreciate you making the time to be with us today. I appreciate your openness. You're very, that's one of the things that's attracted to me to you and the conversations we have. I mean, you're super genuine, and you're a man of faith, and you're a man of principle, and you're just easy to talk to. You got the infectious laugh. I mean, this is like, what's not to like, right? So appreciate you making the time to be on the phone, be on the show today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure being with you again, Joe. It's always good to talk to you. Our conversations go quick, and like you said, and they go an hour or more, it seems like. I do have one question for you, though.
Yeah, you bet.
So you're Joe Patch the fourth, and right. I know you have 10 kids. Yeah. So what did you name any of them Joe Patch the fifth?
I did, yes. Yeah. So I always joke, that was part of the marriage contract when I got married to my wife, that, first boy would get the family name. So, yeah, but that's a little tongue in cheek, but that's what we did do. So my second of the 10, 5 girls, 5 boys, but my second child was a boy. And mm-hmm. so he got the name Joe. So he's the fifth. And, we haven't had to say much. I think he knows the drill, when the time comes, number 6 will be out there. So God willing, we'll be around to be a part of that journey. But yeah. So we were able to sneak one in there, which was nice.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. It's a good story. I appreciate it. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, we're out of time on today's show, but if you're interested in coming on the show, you see it behind me, innergeniuspodcast.com. Go to the website, fill out the form, send it over. We'll be in touch. We could talk about putting you on the show. And so if you, if you're feeling ready to go, you want to get in that hot seat like Marshall did today and share that authentic you, we'd love to have you. So reach out and let us know. Marshall, thank you for your time again, for being with us today. I really enjoyed the conversation.
It was a pleasure, Joe. Thank you.
All right. And everybody, remember, there's a genius inside of all of us. It's up to you to discover it, harness it, and share it with the world. So the question really is this: what's your inner genius? Get it.
This is the Padua Podcast Network. PaduaPodcastNetwork.com.